Up next on Three Guys in a Trek, we are doing episode 4 of The Next Generation, which is The Last Outpost, where the Ferengi and Enterprise teams beam down to an unknown world to discover who or what has sapped power from both vessels. So I'm Matt. I've never seen the series before. We also have Dennis.
I'm Dennis. I've seen the show more times than I can count.
All right. And Mike.
I'm Mike. I've seen some of the shows. This one was a new one, though.
Yeah.
Oh, good. So we're in the same boat.
Mm-hmm.
So the Ferengi.
Bet you that one sounded weird, didn't it? The Ferengi. The Ferengi are...
The flesh-eating Ferengi. Let's not forget our
the previous
first episode.
Previous episodes.
Yes.
The flesh-eating Ferengi. The Ferengi are introduced this episode as they were intended to be the villain of the series is what they were intended to be. They did not come off quite that well, according to anybody. Anybody that you read, whether or not it was people in the episode or critics or just fans in general, they all agree that the Ferengi kind of came off as a little sillier than menacing.
Oh, they were super goofy and silly. Oh, they're just like spastic ADHD aliens.
Uh-huh.
They were just, I don't know what they were trying to do with the Ferengi.
Yeah.
We were talking about it earlier, Dennis. They reminded me a lot of the monkeys from The Wizard of Oz.
Yes. I was
Yeah,
trying to
right?
come up. I kept thinking
You've
goblins.
It's like
Or
I've
monkey,
seen that.
yes.
I've seen that body language before. I know I have.
That's
yeah,
exactly
they
what
look
they
look like monkeys, and
Yep.
I mean, even when they pointed at them, I mean, they threw their hands up in the air and did that
Yeah.
point above their head.
Yep.
I just did the motion like that's going to help at all, but
Yep.
I mean, it was just
The
that was
super
weird.
exaggerated while it's reaching for the gold.
Mhm.
Like the
yeah.
Well, it
It was
introduced this episode introduced Armin. Gosh, I'll never get his name right unless
No,
I see
you
it here.
won't.
Armin Shimmerman. Armin Shimmerman comes back later in Deep Space Nine. He was of the three Ferengi on the planet. He was the leader of the three.
Mhm.
He comes back as Quark as a main.
it is the same actor. Okay.
Same
Yeah.
actor as Quark from Deep Space Nine.
Okay. He's a lot more
so-
subdued.
Yes.
He's had his Ritalin.
Yeah.
Yes. But oddly enough, they cast Quark has a nephew on Deep Space Nine, Nog, and he's 14 years old maybe. But Nog, the actor who played him, the first episode or the first entryway he had into how Ferengi act, they showed him this episode, the Last Outpost,
Mhm.
is the episode they showed him to show him this is.
Was it a prank?
I have no idea because it's not. I don't know because this is not how Ferengi act.
Yeah. And the super up close
Mm-hmm.
viewport when they're talking.
Mhm.
Well, and it was weird because when Picard was talking to him and he was on the screen, his head took up the whole screen.
Yeah.
But then when they had the shots, the close-up of Picard with the screen behind him, you only could see part of his face taking up the entire screen. And at one point, it was like his mouth and chin
Yeah.
were the entire screen.
Yeah.
So you saw nothing but these teeth flying behind Picard's head.
They were
It
very
was
sharp
just-
teeth.
They were
pointy.
very sharp teeth, and they were sticking out. They were pointing straight
Weird,
out.
weird
Some
ray.
of them
You
were.
could see how they may be
Flesh eaters.
flesh eaters.
But they did address that in the episode.
Yeah.
Because he
Only
said that
rumor.
the only thing they have is rumor.
I will say this episode, everything felt a little more confident.
Oh yeah.
Like they started getting their stride, and we sort of know what we're doing now.
Yeah.
And that everyone's sort of settling into their skins.
Yeah, I would say that whereas the last episode, and maybe the last two episodes, I really felt like Geordi, LeVar Burton. I really felt like he was, and I made the statement the last episode. I felt like he was he felt like he knew what he was doing. He knew where he was at. I kind of feel like he kind of went off script a little bit this time.
He
A couple
was-
times. He
yeah,
had a couple
he was
lines that it's
completely
like,
goofy. Yeah. Like I don't know
Yeah.
where
my hero.
Oh man, he was.
Well, I lost it when
he
he
was
did
all
that.
over the place
He
this
was-
episode,
Yeah, he was a little out there, but
which was a drastic difference from the previous episode.
And it really
Absolutely.
was.
So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what kind of direction he got.
yeah, I'm not sure either.
Well, and even Data was acting a little bit sillier.
Yeah,
He was.
He was still doing it within his
But
his place, but he was a little sillier.
And everyone was annoyed by Data at some point. They had no patience for Data in this episode.
No.
Yeah, I
which
noticed
was
that
very
too.
odd to me.
I noticed that too. He was going on and on about the colors of the flags, the finger cuff. That really got to Picard quite a bit. It was
nothing to write home about.
nothing.
And Riker's like, come on.
Yeah,
Like he just thought it was the dumbest thing in the world.
Jordy liked it.
Yeah.
Jordy liked it.
I
Picard
liked
didn't like it.
Picard didn't like it.
Something to write home about. Picard's like, what? Just looked at him.
And the flag moment was a pretty good Data moment too, where they talk about red, white, and blue, and Picard's like, "Oh, the proper order in the French," and the Data just thinks, "Oh, we're just naming flag colors now," and he just starts spouting them off.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems like I saw a video today. They've got a robot now that can solve a Rubik's cube in a quarter of a second. So a random Rubik's cube, a physical, in the 3D world, they've got a robot that can solve it in less than a quarter of a second. And I watched Data with the goofy finger cuff. And I keep going back to, Mike, when we first started watching this, and Mike saying, why does it take him so long? Why does he have to look off to the side and think about? He should be faster than this. He should be able to figure out the finger cuff. Yeah. And he just
how is that finger cuff something we've all played with when we were like 10?
Right.
That's just a hole in his data bank.
Yeah.
He just didn't know how to do it.
He's stuck.
Mm-hmm. And again, later on in this episode, they portrayed him as someone who was super strong.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't you think he could have just ripped that apart?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
But it was a finger trap, and he had fingers in it.
He did.
So
He did. He was trapped.
Yeah.
He was definitely trapped.
All right. So the episode starts out with Enterprise chasing down the Ferengi.
Mm-hmm.
Ferengi have just stolen some piece of tech, and just like in the last episode, you've got this. I guess what was the last? The last one was the Code of Honor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You've got this, and I didn't even think about it until later. But you've got this MacGuffin, right? You've got this thing. Doesn't matter what it is. Right. They've got this thing that they've got to get. So in this case, again, you've got this thing. It's whatever it is, and just like in the last episode, where they finally get the cure, and you have no idea what happens to the plague.
Mm-hmm.
They get to the end of this episode, and they get the thing, and then it's just, oh well, okay, we've got it. We're good. It's just gone again. It's like there's no, they put this, and I guess that's kind of typical for your monster of the week type of shows. These episodic type of shows. You're gonna have this thing that they're going after that's gonna drive the episode. But I find myself, the more I watch these early shows, especially since I'm watching at the same time things like Voyager and Deep Space Nine and Enterprise, I miss the serialness of it. I miss being able to, I miss things that happen now affecting what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And so I miss that there was still no call. We still don't know what happened to all those people with the plague or whatever they had the last episode. And I want to know what happened to those people, and it bothers them to me.
And I'm kind of the opposite. If I was not doing the podcast, we're going to talk about each individual episode. I like the fact that I might be able to skip an episode or two, and it's not going to matter.
Yeah.
That's the main benefit of shows like this.
Right. And, I kind of like that. And because I'm finding it harder as I get older and as my kids get older, I'm finding it harder to sit down and keep up with TV shows.
Yeah, that's true.
And so for me to be able to turn on of course this isn't on TV anymore, I'm watching it on Netflix, but for me to be able to sit down and turn on the TV and watch a show that this one episode is a capsule all into itself is very appealing to me.
Yeah.
I don't have to know what happened last week, unless it's a to be continued, but
right.
I don't have to know what happened last week. I can turn it on and just enjoy the episode.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I do like, there were a lot of things I liked about this episode. I liked, I don't know, a lot of the, the things that caught people by surprise, that caught the crew by surprise, and it wasn't stuff that was like silly. Sometimes it seems like in the past couple episodes, things that have caught the crew by surprise have been things like, duh, why didn't you pick up on that?
Right.
But on this one, with the fact that they legitimately thought the Ferengi had them trapped, and at the same time the Ferengi thought the Enterprise was the one who, and it turned out to be the planet. And then you find out about this this huge, multi-system spanning empire that was out there, and nobody'd ever heard of it. Nobody ever knew anything about it before. And then all of a sudden, there's this, My first thought when he appeared was there's an episode where Riker's on a rocky planet like this, and Q shows up. And my first thought was maybe I had gotten it confused, because when this guy appeared, my first thought was, okay, well, this is going to be Q, and this episode plays out differently than the way I remembered. But you've got, again, this super powerful being who's on this planet that's controlling space around him, that can swat these people away like flies. And I like the fact that there's so much out there bigger than Enterprise, bigger than
that the universe
exactly
was older, more stuff was going on.
Exactly.
We're just in a snapshot right now.
Yeah.
Empires have risen and fallen.
Absolutely.
And what was it? That empire was from what, 600,000 years ago?
Right.
I mean, yeah, that's a significant chunk of time.
And the fact that a chunk of it is still there and able to cause trouble, I guess, or do whatever it wants. That, like you said,
it was basically automated. It was just doing its thing.
And he had the line. He said, typically I would have just destroyed you both and not even thought about it. So I mean, it's not like it's outside the realm of his ability to, okay, when I'm tired, you guys came here, you're shooting at each other, go away, blow up, and pull a Q-like move.
Mm-hmm.
You think that type of power would have aroused more curiosity, especially later episodes, going back to what you're talking about. We've just found this ancient technology that's completely defied all of our modern tech.
Yeah.
We're just going to forget about it and move on.
We're just going to forget about it.
But was it really technology? It was the planet doing it.
It was a planet, but it's still some kind of,
I mean, it would have
magic.
It would have been hard for them to take that back with them.
Yeah. Well, they couldn't take it back, but you think you
send something
hear about it.
Right.
A science vessel comes out later, or some other delegation comes. I don't know.
Right. Something
referring to.
And there's
and
they
you remember
they
when
do
they
stuff like this several times throughout the series. You'll see ancient civilizations that are called back, and something's still happening with them in the present, whether or not it's some type of a portal, or whether or not it's at one point there's a episode where they're talking about potentially a common ancestor among all biped species in the galaxy. So, Cardassians, Klingon, Romulan, Vulcan, humans potentially have this common ancestor trillions and trillions of years ago. And again, they call back on this stuff, and then it goes away. It just okay. Well, and I guess the thing is, it's happening somewhere. I guess. Just because the Enterprise and Picard's not a part of it doesn't mean they're not still studying it somewhere.
Yeah, there are more ships out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I go back to something like Firefly, which of course, shorter. It's hard to compare, but that wasn't really a serialized show.
Right.
And yet, it was episode by episode, and it had a certain very strong character continuity within that.
Right.
And had
Absolutely.
Some episodes
would call back.
With some callbacks, but it wasn't...
Yeah.
You didn't have to exactly know what was going on to...
You didn't have to know what was going on to enjoy it, but if you watch it from beginning to end, there is a strong arc in that show.
There is, yeah.
But you don't realize it until you watch it from beginning to end. And on that one, they didn't do it in Star Trek, but in Firefly, when you get the DVDs, the way the episodes are listed is not in the order that they aired on TV.
Right. They
Some
did
of
the
them are
train.
out of
The train
order.
job was aired first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
pilot episode is actually episodes like 2 and 3 on the DVD or something like that. Yeah.
Or that's the way they aired. Or it was 2 and 3. And Train Job aired
was
1.
supposed to be first. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was.
Yeah. So another callback to Firefly. Oh, sorry, go on.
Go ahead. No.
I was gonna say. So you brought up Firefly. One of the things in Firefly that I always loved was this mix of English and Chinese. All right, so they take off into the future. You're away from Earth that was, and now you're in this galaxy that's or this new solar system that's controlled by the Alliance, and the Alliance and everybody who's part of it, browncoats, whatever. They all speak either English or Chinese, just because those were the main empires that came. Typically, the only Chinese you hear in Firefly is when they're saying cuss words.
Yeah.
And they see how far they could push the censors.
So they got away with it. Picard did the same thing in this episode, and the only reason I caught it is because I watch everything with closed captions, and it's become a force of habit for me to watch everything with closed captions.
He said a couple of things under his breath this episode.
He did. So they did the thing where they're going to shut power way down, and they're going to try to ramp it up to warp 9 and back off and try to come forward really hard, and then it didn't work. And you hear Picard, and he said, and I'll never pronounce it right. It's a French word. It's M-E-R-D-E, merde, merde.
Okay.
It's basically sh, blah blah blah, crap. And that's and it's like because he didn't make. It's not like he shouted anything. He's just like crap.
Yeah.
It's like I really expected that to work. Crap. And I'm surprised that they let it. I guess I don't know why I'm surprised they let it fly, but they did. They let it fly. You go to Google, you look it up, and it's not crap. It's it's
it's the stronger version.
It is definitely the stronger version, and that but
yeah.
Thought that was kind of I did never picked up anything else like that, and I'm curious as to how much more throughout the series did he do that more, and I just didn't catch it. I don't know. I'm waiting to see what comes.
Well, we sometimes the word we translate dung in the Old Testament is really the stronger,
the stronger one.
In Hebrew. It's the stronger
Oh,
word.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So that is pretty funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, Picard. There's one weird scene with Picard where I think he said rubbish or something like that. It's between him and Doctor.
What did he say?
Where she says, "I have Wesley in his room."
Yeah.
Gave him a sedative, and he said, "Every man should face his death
alive or awake,
wide awake, or something like that." And she says, "Is that a man's perspective?" And he just says, "Rubbish," or something like that.
And I think that is what he said. I think he said rubbish.
I thought that was a very weird interaction.
And I mean, it's almost like she's questioning this idea that it sounds like he's putting forth the idea that a man should face his death. Be a man, face your death. And she's like, well, this is my baby boy. This is and did his dad had to face his death and blah, and she's like, is that a man's perspective? Is that is he supposed to be a man? And I think Picard took it as she's throwing that back in his face that way, and
that did come. I guess all that baggage just kind of came up and slapped him in the face.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. I think that
there's a callback, I guess.
There you go.
There are for everybody here some character interaction callbacks, like the one with where for some reason there's the two boys playing in the conference room for the sole purpose, I guess, of getting Picard's reaction because he hates kids.
Get him out.
That was awesome.
Get him out of the conference room.
You're not supposed to be playing like.
There's
Riker knew exactly their names.
That's
These
what
are
I
the
was.
first times we've ever seen them.
Yep. There's 1,000 people on this ship, and Riker knows these two kids by sight.
Yeah. I guess they're in there a lot.
Well, of course he does. He let them in to mess with Picard.
Yeah, okay, I can see that. Sure. So what we think about the Ferengi in general? Like I said, we'll go back to that because the Ferengi, this introduced some of the things that stick with them. The whole idea that they're traitors, they're these, like Data said, Yankee traitors, and not the best of that, but more of the buyer beware. They're looking to make profit.
Yeah,
as best they can, and that does stick with them through Deep Space Nine. Some of the other things, the name of their captain, Damon, that's a rank that sticks with them, throughout.
The pool noodle stun guns.
That doesn't. I was the only reason I know this because I read it somewhere else. The only 2 times the whips show up is on this episode, which is the first appearance of the Ferengi, and on an episode of Enterprise, which is the last appearance of the Ferengi so far.
Oh,
those are the only 2 times you see the stun whips. So
they did bring him back.
Yeah.
Mike, you're shaking your head.
You didn't like the pool. You didn't like the pool noodle whip.
When I first saw them, I thought, okay, cool, they got whips. This should be good. And then they used the whips, and I'm like, huh, look at that.
Mike grew up around the pool supplies, and he knows a pool noodle when he sees one.
Yeah. I mean, because at first when I saw it, it looked thick when he had it coiled in his hand. I thought, well, maybe it's just a long whip, and it just looks thick. And then he used it, and it's like 3 feet long. It's like, okay, that's what that is.
Yeah.
But it was like, and the actors acted like they didn't even really know how to use it either.
Oh, no.
They didn't really know what to do with it.
No.
So we're supposed to be acting like the monkeys from Wizard of Oz. How would they use it?
How would
Use
they
weapons.
Yeah.
They were compared to the Yankee traders at the beginning. By the end of the episode, though, it seemed when Riker's having the conversation with Portal, I guess was what he was calling him, it's like he was making them equivalent with the capitalistic engine in general of the past.
Yeah.
Like he wasn't, it's like we grew out of it and all this other stuff.
Yeah. I couldn't really tell what he was implying or what he was referring to with them. Was he thinking more of them because they displayed a lot of weird characteristics for the seemingly technologically advanced race. Cause
almost everything was a lie that came out of their mouth.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But for them to be so advanced, and I don't know, just the way they acted, the weapons seemed low tech. The view on women, you actually work with your women and you let them wear clothes.
You force them to wear clothes.
Force them to wear clothes.
Force them to wear clothes.
You'll just tempt people to undress them.
That's disgusting.
That stays with them through Deep Space Nine as well.
Okay.
That's another one that sticks.
That was a very distinctive line, so I was curious if that would.
Yeah, that doesn't go away.
From what I know about the Ferengi from other shows, and I keep bringing it back up at that video game, they're not. I mean, they might have some of those characteristics like you were saying, some of the things about their views on women and all that. Okay, but most of the interactions you see with them, they're very intelligent, very shrewd traders, and there are some of them that use that ability for nothing but profit. But man, I just didn't see any of that. They were just
doofus.
They were like kids. I mean,
just the constant
moving around, like they had no idea what to do. It was just
when you call them primitive because they're like when they say you work with your women, but we haven't had mixed place workplaces for that long. And I was just like,
no, we haven't.
Right.
It's been 80 years maybe, if that. We're still new to that whole phenomenon.
Yeah,
and we have thousands of years before that where that wasn't the case.
Yeah,
and so
that's true.
It's very it's relatively new even to us today.
But at the same time, this is late 80s. So this is your typical 80s, I guess, yuppie woman is going to have, the power, the solid color power dress and the big shoulder pads and
the power suit.
You know what I mean? And that's and to I guess to make this new alien species seem as evil as possible, they completely, oh no, our women are not like that. Our women don't wear anything, let alone a power suit or shoulder pads. They wear nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. But they need to respect all cultures.
Yes, absolutely.
Which they talk about, like the Ferengi's accusation against the Federation officers is the Prime Directive.
Yes.
which I
The
found
crimes
very interesting.
the crimes he accused him of is the prime directive.
Yeah.
They're withholding technology from primitive races, primitive planets, primitive something. Yeah.
Mhm.
But that they've let things rise and fall,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mhm.
I liked this. This was the first really Riker centric episode, and he really solved the thing, from beginning to end. It was, he went to the planet. He was the first one they showed. He found everybody. He was the first one that woke up when, after the Ferengi stunned him. He was the one that talked to the portal. The portal, basically respected him as equals. Well, asked Riker's opinion. Well, what should we do with these other creatures? And it really did. This was a good episode for him.
The portal. First of all, when I saw that and he had his weapon, and first thing I thought it was Highlander.
Yeah.
Different topic though. We don't want to go down that rabbit hole again.
I thought Wizard of Oz first.
Yeah,
we got Wizard of Oz
and Star Trek 5.
Yes,
with
the god. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But the portal. It was almost like he was putting on a show. He was trying to intimidate them,
Right.
and Riker was clearly not intimidated. Not only was he not intimidated, he was clearly in control of his people.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And the character of the portal, it's I don't know, that character, it intrigued me. I really liked the character because it was so different. He starts out trying to be that intimidating thing, and then he finally gets to a point where he's like, yeah, okay. He just turns that off and like, all right, yeah, I'm just a normal guy. So yeah, I'm a lot more powerful than you. I'm a lot older than you. Let's finish this up. I really want to go back to sleep.
You interrupted my nap. I'm unhappy.
Right.
I've been asleep from
and
the age of back to through to the age of
yeah. Well, we're in this age. Well, that's impossible. Nope, we've had this age and this age and this age. Data, shut up. Oh, okay. Got annoyed with him there too.
Yep.
But I mean, really, there at the end, he was just an old dude that wanted to go back to sleep, and he really was powerful. But he really,
within his
it's hard for me to tell.
Influence.
Yeah, it was hard for me to tell which one of those personas was real. Was the real persona him when he was being ultra intimidating, and then, like you said, Riker stuck out to him so much that he let his guard down against Riker, or was he really just testing all of them, and Riker's the only one who passed?
To me, I kind of feel like
it all comes back to Riker either way.
Absolutely. I kind of feel like he's kind of the opposite side of the coin of Q. All right, Q comes in, and he's protecting the universe the only way he knows how, and that's by forcibly stopping people from doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
The first episode he tells Enterprise, this is your final frontier. Go home. Whereas this guy, he may not quite be as powerful as Q outside of, like you said, his sphere of influence.
Right.
But within that sphere, he's pretty impressively powerful.
All he did was raise his hand and look up, and the Enterprise got power back.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean,
but it struck me as kind of an optimistic view. Star Trek is our optimistic view of the future, right? We look at Star Trek as, 300 years from now, there may be no war, there may be no crime, there may be no prejudice, there may be, nothing, greed is a thing of the past. Everything is a utopia, and at this point, science and exploration and all those things are what we have to look forward to. And I kind of feel like this guy on his planet and the Takan Empire, I think that's kind of their, an optimistic view of what the Federation could be one day. It stretches, it's boundless. It's huge, it's powerful, but it's not aggressively so. Yes, it has the ability to destroy things on a whim, but it takes personal view into account. It takes the little guy into account. He goes to Riker. He picks out what's in Riker's head, the most recent conversation about Sun Tzu and, the quote that he had spoken to the captain, and then he turns it around and he quotes more Sun Tzu to Riker. And I think that the Federation would aspire to be that way as well. They're not out, and I think the way that Picard at the beginning of the episode treats the Ferengis, where they run up on them and the Ferengis fire, and Picard's like, no, let's not fire back right away. Let's talk. Let's see what we can do. I think that kind of shows that the Federation is on the right course to kind of take that same place in the galaxy that Tikhon Empire had 600,000 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I keep going back to because essentially they don't kill the Ferengi. He advises against killing the Ferengi because maybe they'll learn and grow out of it, even though there's a risk they won't. The thing I keep thinking about is this misunderstanding of capitalism and profit that everyone seems to have or be against. Because even if it's not money, like the Federation isn't building these ships just because and sending them out just because. They want a return on their investment.
Absolutely.
Now that return looks far different from monetary profit.
Right.
But they still want a return on what they're investing in, the time, the manpower, all this other stuff.
Sure.
So it's still there.
Right.
Right. They're still looking for a return on their investment.
Yeah,
some
absolutely.
Kind.
Whether or not it's knowledge or
the
territory
well,
or
and that's what I was going to say.
influence
It's the utopian return of we're just after knowledge.
Yeah.
And that's what the premise is. They don't want to. They weren't excited to go back and get the thing that was stolen from them or punishing the Ferengi. Picard was excited because we're finally going to get to meet the Ferengi.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't going to be hearsay. This is going to be we're going to actually talk to them.
Yeah.
This is going to be great, and it's our chance to learn. And that's the return that they're looking for.
Yeah.
And
even is that what bites them in the butt when they meet the Borg finally?
Could be.
We'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah, that could be. Yeah, I mean, even up to the point where they make the deal to meet on the planet, and Troy says, "Oh, he's definitely hiding something," and Picard's still like, "Well, I don't know about you guys, but to me, that was a positive outcome. That was as best as we." And I think throughout the whole thing, for all he knows, their ship is the more powerful of the two. For all he knows, the Ferengi eat people, and he still has this optimistic viewpoint.
Yeah.
That we still don't know that they don't.
Exactly
At this point,
we don't know that they
looks
don't.
like they
eat
might
people.
still.
They've got awfully sharp teeth.
Mm-hmm. So it seemed Worf.
He
had
really wants
more
to punch
knowledge.
something.
He does, but it seemed like he had more knowledge of the Ferengi than he let on.
I caught
that
too.
He was like, stopped by the Ferengi, just under his breath. He knows they're just. He just thinks they're beneath him.
Yeah. And I don't know. I don't know if the Klingons have. I guess the Klingons have been a spacefaring. They've been out in the galaxy longer than the Federation has.
Okay.
And the only reason I know that is from I'm watching Enterprise right now, and
okay.
So the current Enterprise or the original Enterprise ran into the Klingons, and the Klingons have been out for hundreds of years already. So there's a chance that the Klingons have run into the Ferengi already. So but what would surprise me about that is that if there's questions about the Ferengi and what they are, and why haven't they asked Worf?
Right.
But I guess again, this is the humans first face to face with the Ferengi, and that makes a difference. That first contact by the human race.
Well, and almost like Data, every time Worf said something, he was called down.
He was, he was aggressive, and
he was a little aggressive, yeah. And they called him down a lot.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Worf and Yar.
Yeah, they both really wanted to kill the
fire those proton torpedoes.
Man, oh man.
Let's lower the shields. Let's turn off life support. Let's fire some torpedoes.
We've got 53 seconds left of shield. We need to fire these things before we can't fire these things. And then Picard's, no, let's wait and see what happens. No, we've got 50 seconds left. Now, what are you waiting for? And she's still counting down while he's trying to...
Patience. That's all he said.
Yeah.
Relax.
There's some more nuanced interaction between Picard and some other crew members too, because when before everything starts to go down and the ship moves forward a little bit, Picard just kind of says, "Don't anticipate."
Yeah.
And George's like, I'm not.
Yeah. Almost. Yeah. You
wait for my order. Don't anticipate what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
You wait for my order. And
yeah. I didn't really. I even though I watched it twice, I didn't really pick up on that. But you're right, because you don't hear him do stuff like that often. He's. We talked about during the first episode. This crew should be. They're on the flagship of the Federation, so this should be the best of the best. And yet he's still teaching as he's leading. Like you said, don't anticipate what I'm going to do. Let me tell you what to do.
Yeah.
But he also sent Geordi to engineering. Geordi ends up being the
chief engineer.
Chief engineer.
And apparently they liked. Another thing I read about this episode, they liked the interaction where Geordi was down there. There was no reason that anybody down there should have listened to Geordi. He starts giving commands. Like this is what we got to do. You need to do this. He puts his hands on guy's shoulders and he starts rubbing the dude's shoulders. This is what we're gonna do. There's no reason that dude should have listened to Geordi. Geordi's he's a lower ranking. I guess he's red shirt, so I guess technically he's command.
He's an officer.
But still,
what else? Who was Picard trying to talk to before he sent Geordi down there?
Right, exactly. Yeah, you go down there and it's not like, oh, our chief engineer is dead.
Yeah,
it's like there's
really
nobody here.
Yeah,
who are you calling that they're not there anymore?
Right.
But it's Geordi's kind of getting his spot, and that becomes. I don't know if you noticed when Geordi and Riker were down there, there was kind of a table about the size of a pool table, and it had some equipment on it. That becomes a pretty standard set piece in the that's
right.
part of engineering going forward. This is kind of the first appearance of that set piece.
Yeah. We talked in an earlier episode about Roddenberry's vision, and one of his requirements of this show in particular, there would be no interpersonal conflict except from an external cause. Was that just for this show? Was that always his vision for things? Because I recently rewatched the first Star Trek movie.
Generations?
Just
Star Trek,
the motion picture
with V'ger and
V'ger, yeah.
Gotcha, the bald lady.
And and then I also watched the third one as well, which isn't as bad as I remembered. As part of a greater whole, it's okay. But the first one, Kirk comes on, and him and Decker, he takes over command of the Enterprise from Decker, and they're butting heads the whole time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of interpersonal conflict on that Enterprise.
Yeah, that's true.
Kirk was in a personal conflict. That was his. That's who he was.
Yeah, that's true. And it may not have had it. When you go into something like a movie. You may need more of that. You may not be able to let it ride the way you can on a weekly television show where it's a monster of the week.
Right.
You need a chance to build up that the suspense, build up the tension, and you start small with, like you said, the small interpersonal, and then you build out to eventually it's this probe that we sent out, hundreds of years ago, and it's come back to kill us all. Okay.
Yeah. It's looking for its daddy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the interesting thing about that one is that Picard wasn't nearly as gung-ho and aggressive. Like there was the conflict, and then he was doing his part to back off of the conflict. Like there's one scene where Decker countermands him. It said something like, like, advice that goes against what he said, and he says, Decker, quit countermanding me. And Decker goes, it's my job as second officer or as first officer to do this. And he goes, you're absolutely right. Carry on. Like, he's about to rail into him, but he stops.
If only you could see Matt doing William Shatner, because he gets a hand up there and he's and you can tell it's that weighted pause, and he's gonna do it. Yeah. it was entertaining.
I was just curious.
Yeah, like I said,
that was just from Next Generation. It's been another 100 years. And
yeah, that's true. As far as I know, that was the way it was in the original series, though, as well. Mm-hmm. Now, when you get into Deep Space Nine, that goes right out the door. The whole thing with Deep Space Nine is the Federation are coming to take over the space station that's been under control of the Cardassians. The Cardassians are in orbit, and the space station is in orbit around Bajor. So the Cardassians have been basically holding Bajor for however many years. And so now it's a joint Bajoran Federation team running the space station. And there's a lot of conflict there. Mm-hmm. Between the head of the Bajorans and then the head of the captain there on. So I guess they kind of get around it by well, maybe the Starfleet people don't have conflict with each other, but maybe they do with the Bajorans. Maybe they can get around it that way. But
then they have the whole Section 31 thing too, right? With like the Black Ops Starfleet.
Yep, that gets into later on into Deep Space. You get into the weird NSA almost kind of thing.
Deep state stuff.
Yeah.
And of course, I guess like you said, Cisco hates Picard.
Cisco hates Picard.
So
blames him for his wife's death.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty rough.
Yeah. I haven't known what we're talking about for about 5 minutes, so I'm good.
How's it going,
Mike? I'm pretty sure I've seen the original movie, but it's been so long.
Oh,
I don't.
Same here.
I couldn't tell you anything about it.
It's actually good. Yeah. Like, I was impressed by some of the special effects they're about to pull off. The only thing is that when Scotty's flying Kirk to the Enterprise to land on it, because the transporter room is shut down for very good reason. And it's no joke. It's literally at least 10 minutes of them just flying around the Enterprise slowly. And at the end of it, Kirk says, "Thank you, Mr. Scott." Because I guess it's the first time people have seen the Enterprise in 10 years, I guess.
Yeah.
And so but good grief.
Right.
I mean, I know why the movie gets the reputation that it does. Yeah. But other than that, it's actually... there's some good character moments with Spock.
Absolutely.
And Spock has a lot of growth and all that stuff, but whew, I don't know who decided that was important for that movie.
Stanley Kubrick didn't do that movie. Right?
No.
It's very Stanley Kubrick.
It is.
Well, it's very much trying to evoke a lot of 2001 Space Odyssey stuff, for sure. So what's overall impressions of this episode? The Last Outpost.
Why are you looking at me? I get to go first?
Sure.
Okay. I enjoyed it. Again, while I was sitting there watching it, I was thinking about Wizard of Oz and the Highlander while it was all going on. But I thought it was good. Like I said, the biggest thing from the background characters that I came up with is that Worf is going to have to punch something soon, or he's going to explode.
Yeah.
I mean, he really wants to fight. And the one fight that he obviously did have was off scene, and it was between him and the other two Ferengi.
And he lost.
And he lost because there was two of them. Yeah. And they were stronger than they looked, which was another funny moment.
He called them pygmies.
Yeah, he did. But that was another funny moment when Data was holding one of them up in the air with one hand. And he looked at Riker and goes, "Yeah, they're stronger than they look." And then Riker gets knocked out, and Data just kind of shakes his head disapprovingly and has this look on his face like,
kind of give him a look
I'm
like,
disappointed in you.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I liked it. I told Dennis earlier I'm coming to what is to me somewhat of a startling realization. I think I enjoy the campiness
Yeah.
as much as anything else. This one didn't have anything that ranked up there with space jellyfish, but it was still good. I enjoyed it. I really did. I'm liking these older episodes a lot better than I thought I would.
Yeah. I enjoyed it. I like the Riker centric. I like the fact that so far, each episode or every couple of episodes now we're getting, a character or two characters kind of get their moment to shine. And I know that Worf is going to get his here before too long, and I don't know that Geordi gets one anytime soon. But
he tried this episode.
Oh man! But I really like Geordi. He's one of the more fun characters. But I really think they did a good job of just showing how poised and how in control Riker is. This really was a good Riker episode. Kind of showed he deserves to be where he's at. He deserves what he's gotten. I enjoyed it. The Ferengi, I know where they're going, so I know what they're going to become. But
I know what they're going to become too. That's why this one surprised me as much as it is. Like, wow, really?
Okay. Even I've seen scenes of Deep Space Nine with Quark.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just,
I mean, they did everything but throw poop.
Out of this world.
They did everything.
They did everything but throw poop at them. I mean, and even at the end, Riker was looking at him like a kid looks at the monkeys in the zoo. I mean, he was just big open mouth grin, big wide eyes, just watching them bounce around. It's like, what is going on?
They were gonna send the finger cuffs to the Ferengi.
Yeah.
Dude,
that was great. And Picard smirked. Make it so.
Make it so. Well, apparently that was a callback to a original series episode, Trouble Were Tribbles. All right, so you have the Tribbles in the original series, and Klingons and Tribbles don't get along
at all.
So at the end of the episode, the Klingons are getting ready to fly away, and they're mad and they're upset because they're Klingons, and Kirk tells Scotty to beam them a box of triples, and it's kind of a callback to that same thing. It's like, oh well, they're upset. Let's be nice, but kind of a backhanded be nice.
Right.
Here, well, let's give you something that you're not really gonna like.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. I thought it was good.
So what do you think, Matt?
Yeah, this, like I said, it felt a lot more confident getting it stride. But again, the Ferengi were just so distracting. So distracting.
They literally could not stand still.
No. that had to be like a mandate or something to the actors.
Oh,
it's like
gosh,
you cannot stop moving at all. Oh man,
Armin Shimmerman said something.
One of them, and I couldn't tell you what the character's name was, but one of them, he wouldn't look at him when he was talking.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever he was talking, he was looking off to the side while he was talking.
Yeah,
and he never looked at anybody that he was talking to. It was so strange. I mean, because like what Dennis said, I've seen Quark. I've seen the Ferengi represented in that video game. I know what they eventually become in Star Trek lore.
Yeah.
And this is just, I mean,
yeah,
they aged quickly if this is what their entire culture was like at this time.
So this is what Armin Shimmerman said. He said, I was pretty much playing over-the-top villain. That turned out to be very comical. I thought I was being serious, but obviously it was not serious. It's because there's no subtlety to the performance. There was no attempt to try to give them some real cojones. It was bad acting. It was just bad acting. They liked it. God bless them. Star Trek liked it. So, I mean,
that is God bless Arthur Shimmerman.
God bless him.
I mean, but that's the building blocks of Star Trek.
Yeah.
We can take bad acting and we can make it great.
Absolutely. You can turn even if it's it's unintentional, but we can turn it into a stereotype for some character or we can take this unintentional quirk that this bad actor had and turn it into
an entire culture.
An entire culture.
It's almost, and I know I talked about this during our first episode, the Gorn episode, the Gorn fight.
Sure.
From the original series. That was a horrifically acted scene. And I'm really, I would have to watch it again. I really don't think it was that long of a scene, but in my mind, it was like, that's all I remember from that episode. And the way the Ferengi acted was an unintentional direct callback to that. I mean, it was just because the guy that was playing the Gorn, he didn't know what he was doing.
No.
It looked like a guy in a Godzilla suit trying to act like Godzilla in a fight.
Right.
And it was so awkward. But that episode lives on in legend.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just.
So what would you rate this episode? 0 to 7.
I wouldn't rate it as high as the last one. I don't remember what I rated the last one.
We're gonna start writing these
Wasn't
down.
it? Wasn't it out
Need to
of?
go
Wasn't it
back
out of
and get
10?
those.
When did it become 7?
It's always been 7.
It's always been.
Has it
Seven
always been
seasons?
7?
7 seasons.
7 seasons. Okay.
It was, it was.
It was one of those.
My fault.
Sure, why not?
It sounded good in the first episode.
Now we're stuck.
Yeah. I'd say probably a 3.5. I'll put it about the middle of the road.
I go 4. Like I said, to me it was. I like Riker. Riker's always one of my favorite characters. He's the cool half of the Kirk analog in
Yeah.
Star Trek: The Next Generation. You got Picard and Riker, and they are Kirk, and he had his chance to show his unflappable Kirkness
Yes,
Yeah.
he
in
did.
this episode.
I was curious why they didn't take down any supplies with them. Because there was a risk that it was going to be a one-way.
That's true.
That they might be down there for quite a while.
That's true.
You
I
mean
was-
forever?
Yeah,
Because they
forever,
couldn't
yeah.
get back.
you had to ask. Yeah,
Yep.
it's another one of those off the cuff Geordie remarks.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I would rate this a 4, which I think that's what I rated the last episode.
Yeah.
Mainly,
Yeah.
it did feel a lot more confident, and you could tell that they're both the actors and the writers. I think the writers' room, it's gonna start going up from here. I feel
Mhm.
like there might be some bumps in the road. I'm sure, but I think the trajectory might be slightly
And,
at
see,
an incline.
and that's
There-
and
there-
that's the thing that kind of worries me a little
There's some
bit.
bumps. We're gonna get to some 2s here
Well-
before too long.
Well, but I mean, what you're talking about they're finding their stride and the episodes are going to start going up from here. That kind of worries me because, like I said, I've come to the realization that I really enjoyed these first few episodes, and if they start getting away from that and going more serious,
that doesn't happen
it-
anytime soon.
well, I'm not saying anytime soon. I'm talking about the next couple of seasons.
Yeah.
It would be one of those things where I would still watch it, but I might lose a little bit of interest in it.
Yeah.
Because I'm really enjoying the campiness and the silliness that's going. I mean, they're still doing well, maybe not in every episode
everyone-
we've seen, but this one they still did a little bit more serious. They did a lot of character development with
Mhm.
Riker.
Yep.
And everyone almost died.
and
on the
everyone
ship.
almost
They
died.
still do the hard to escape musical cues where
You know,
you
but
know
that
you're
was-
supposed
I didn't
to
notice
be.
them as much.
Oh, yeah?
This time.
Oh, it happened before every commercial break.
Yeah. Okay.
It did. But that was a product of the time that the show was on.
Right, and the fact that you didn't notice them means that the directing's getting better.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, because you think about it, this was on in the 80s, so this is only 30 years since everything was on radio.
Yeah, that's true.
So, I listened to a lot of the old time radio shows on the satellite radio.
Mhm.
And man, there was a lot of organs, and every show had a live band.
Yeah,
I mean, and people complain about advertising now, but advertising back then I think was even worse because, like on Netflix, I said it happened before every commercial break, but we don't see the commercials.
Yeah.
You get the build-up music, there's a slight pause, and then there's music again,
And then the captain's log.
and then the
To bring
captain's
us
log,
back into the,
and then they're going on with the show. But you listen to that old time radio show, what is it, the Jack Benny program? I've always heard it was the Jack Benny program, but when they introduced it on the radio, it's Welcome to the Jello program starring Jack Benny. It's like, oh, okay, and
really.
yeah, and there was another show where it had an actor, and his specific job, whenever he showed up, he was going to talk about whoever the sponsor was. So at one point during, I can't remember the show now, but their sponsor was Folgers Coffee. And so whenever this one character would show up, he would start talking about Folgers coffee, how it's good to the last drop. And he would drop all the taglines. And he was the commercial in the middle of the show.
That's hilarious.
And there was one point, it was Johnson's glow coat. It was a wax, furniture wax, a floor polish, and all this kind of thing. And he walked in, and it was one of those family comedies, and the I don't take as much of an issue with this one because everybody in the show was kind of an idiot. But the bumbling husband had made a mess in the kitchen, and because he was trying to submit a film to Hollywood so he could be hired as a comedic actor. And so they've got this camera where they're filming him doing all this silly stuff, and he breaks dishes and spills stuff in the kitchen. And so this guy that's the commercial guy shows up, and while they're talking, they say, well, his wife says, well, just wait a minute, I'll go ahead and clean this up. And then all of a sudden the commercial guy grabs the camera and goes, oh, no, this will be great. We'll film this. And he's like, yeah, clean this up and clean that up and use your Johnson's glow coat and do this and do that and show everybody how awesome it is. And then sit up and spread your arms real wide and just to show how easy it was. And it's like, this is like a 5-minute segment out of a 25-minute show. And it's like, that was their commercial.
That's funny.
Yeah. I guess
I found myself at the bottom of a rabbit hole there. I'm sorry. I apologize.
You still got that a little bit, I think, with the rest of the story. Was it Phil Harvey?
Yes.
He would go.
He would do that.
He would do that. So I guess he's still part of that old school.
Yeah, he would because the rest of the story, the whole build up for the rest of the stories, he would tell half of it at one point during the day, and then at night he would give you the rest of the story.
Yeah,
that was the shtick behind that show.
And he would always go into, like, naturally as part of the show talking about a product.
Yeah.
Yes, he would.
And that voice. I wonder if podcasts will ever evolve to just go back to what radio is doing. I think some of them already have.
That depends. Do we have a product to sell?
If somebody wants to pay us to try that out, to use their product, we're for it, man. No.
Absolutely.
Brought to you by Mucinex.
Mucinex.
It reminds me of the...
That is, sure.
Time for a drink of water. I'll be right back.
And he's drinking Evian. And now he's wearing Evian.
Now I'm wearing the Evian.
The pure spring water with a hint of mineral taste.
Evian, if you're listening, just give us a call.
All right, so how do we, you got an alternate name for this one? So this
I've
one
been thinking about this all afternoon. I have not been able to come up with one.
What was this one called? The Last Outpost?
Last Outpost.
Honestly, if I was going to rename it, it would be something like, Episode 4, Riker's the Man. I mean, he just like I said, this was all him, dude. This is set up Riker as the hero of the show, I think.
Yeah.
They did a good job.
Riker of Oz.
Riker of Oz.
I don't know. I keep trying to come up with something with finger trap in the name, but that's what I've been. Ferengi finger traps. I don't know.
The Ferengi finger trap. See, now that's got some alliteration to it. That
it
could
does.
have actually
It does. That could be good.
That could have actually been a Star Trek episode.
Now, this is one thing that I've noticed is that Matt, when he talks about the shows, we all have the different things that we talk about. Me and you specifically, Dennis, we talk about the opposite side of the same coin every time.
Okay.
You talk about character development on the crew.
Mm-hmm.
I talk about the monster of the week.
You do.
And that's the two opposite sides of that coin that you and I watch this show for.
That's true. That you've probably got something there. Like I said, I love this crew. It's something you go back to, and you keep seeing them over and over and over again. Whether they're in Star Trek Next Generation, or they, several of them make cameos in Deep Space Nine and in Voyager, and you get some of them make cameos, oddly enough, in Enterprise, and then you watch all these movies.
Really?
And it's and the last episode, spoiler alert, the last episode of Enterprise is the crew is on their last mission, and it turns out that Riker and Troy are watching that mission on a holodeck.
Oh,
and
okay.
So it kind of cuts off at the end, and they start talking about this is how it went on to finish, and blah 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 blah. But yeah, you got Jonathan Frakes and Marina Sirtis come back, and
okay. Yeah, I like this crew too, just mainly because of the movies.
Yeah.
Like that's how I know 'em, from Generations to First Contact. All that stuff.
Yeah. Now, people the generation older than us might disagree with me here, but they're probably not listening anyway. But
No
this
one's
is kind of I'll listen later, maybe. This crew has kind of become the iconic Star Trek crew.
Yeah.
I think that this crew and this cast has overtaken the original series crew as being, when people think of Star Trek, you think of Picard, Riker, Troy, Data.
Yeah.
You think of those. If somebody mentions specifically the original series, you immediately think Spock and Kirk and Bones, and then you have to stop and think for the other people.
Yeah.
But this one, I mean, most casual Star Trek fans can name off the majority of this crew.
Well, and it's because they're still part of pop culture. You know, you
Yeah.
still got, Brent Spiner and LeVar Burton making cameos on Big Bang Theory. You know, they show up, and with Will Wheaton, he's still all over the place. You know, Patrick Stewart is everywhere still.
He's
He's
everywhere.
coming back as Jean-Luc Picard
Yeah.
in a new Star Trek series.
Lots
You know,
of memes.
They're
Well,
still,
and they're still I mean, most of them are still on the convention trail too.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, the big
You
thing
know?
is, like I said, they're still out there. Star Trek, the original series, didn't end on a positive note. It wasn't a popular show.
No, it got canceled. It got canned.
So I mean, you know, when they were at their height of, you know, their star power in the late '60s, you know,
It
William
was weird.
Shatner was what was he on, Chips? No, he wasn't Chips. It
T.J.
was,
Hooker.
T.J. Hooker. So I mean, you know, it's yeah.
He's in a few episodes of The Twilight Zone, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, he was. Yeah, but
He's on the preview.
But was that
the
before
original
Star Trek?
series
I don't know.
I think it was before Star Trek.
might have been before Star Trek. The original series didn't really reach its height in popularity until the early '80s,
Right. Yeah, syndication.
which was crazy.
Yeah.
When it was syndication and it was on, like what I was talking about in our first episode, when it was on every Sunday, you'd come home and watch it after church.
Yeah.
You'd be eating your leftovers or whatever you picked up on the way home from church, and you'd come home and you'd turn on Star Trek.
Yeah.
Now I'm old enough that was part of my stigma about Star Trek was there was one TV in the house and I was the remote control. So I didn't have a choice but to watch it.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I've been enjoying it.
Yeah.
More than I thought I would. At first, when we first started talking about this, I almost said no. I was kind of dreading it, but then when I started watching it, I'm watching every episode just waiting for the space jellyfish.
Yeah.
Not specifically the space jellyfish, but for that moment.
Yeah.
And in this episode, that moment was when you see the Ferengi person. And they were monkeys.
They're dancing like the little dancers on the background from Laugh In, you know, and and you keep waiting for them to all stop, and then
Yeah.
somebody poke out of a hole and tell a stupid joke. That's what I mean.
Yeah. But the other moment in this one that got me is when, and this is when the thing from the Highlander really popped in my head, is when he went like he was going to attack Riker, and he started
stop
twirling all that thing, and he stopped it right above him,
it.
and it was like, man, there can be only one.
There can be only one. But see, that's good science fiction evokes other science fiction.
It
To
does.
me, that's
It
I mean,
absolutely does.
anything that you watch nowadays evokes something from, you know, Star Wars or Star Trek or Lord of the Rings or, you know, The Expanse or, you know, Dune.
Dune.
Or, you know, I mean, good science fiction evokes other science fiction.
It does.
Or, you know, you just talked about, you know, the first Star Trek movie, and, you know, it was very much a call to 2001 Space Odyssey. And I mean, you know, that's, you know, it even though these are about all these different universes and all these different, you know, huge set pieces, you know, they've all got that thread in common that makes them seem like they're related.
Yeah.
All right.
I think that's it.
Yeah,
I think
that's
I
it.
got nothing else to say about this one. I think we've kicked this one as much as we can.
Kick those Ferengi away
Right,
from us.
right in the sharp, pointy teeth.
Yeah. Until next time.
Yep.